Welcome to the March 2025 National Power BI User Group Meetup. So, just a quick announcement and a little bit of history for folks who may or may not know this. The National Power BI User Group actually is older than Power BI, believe it or not. So, what happened was there was the engine that powers Power BI, known as the Vertipack engine, actually goes all the way back to SQL Server Analysis Services, which is now kind of old, like me. And so starting in about Excel 2007, they actually started putting the VertPack engine inside of Excel. So they started calling it Power Pivot. And then in Excel 2010, they built something called Power Query and put that into Excel. It was a downloadable Microsoft add-in that you could install in Excel. And people started doing some really interesting things with it, automating ETL processes, visualizing millions of rows. And they came out with another tool inside of Excel called Power View, which now since been deprecated several years ago. So alas, Power View is no more. But so between Power View, Power Pivot, and Power Query, so people would use all these tools inside of Excel and create this really interesting dynamic reporting. And then they'd put it on SharePoint and they could share it with folks. People could look at the files in Excel for the web and do some interesting things. And so Microsoft saw this potential, and from that, they birthed Power BI, what is now Power BI. And it's been this 10-year-long journey. They officially released Power BI July 24th, 2015. I had to go look it up this morning. And so it's been about almost 10 years now. And this user group was actually around before that. So there's a gentleman named Rob Colley. He was a developer at Microsoft and then left to start a group called P3 Adaptive. And so he was a big supporter of user groups early on. Again, even before Power BI existed, he was really promoting the sort of modern Excel techniques. And so we were actually started as the Nashville Modern Excel User Group. If you go to our meetup page, it'll still say in the URL Nashville Modern Excel User Group. And so with the advent of Power BI, the name was changed to Nashville Modern Excel and Power BI User Group. And so we have decided to officially rename to the Nashville Power BI User Group. We're also using a Nashville Pug from time to time. Nashville Modern Excel and Power BI User Group is a bit of a mouthful, so we've officially have changed the name. And of course, you also cover Fabric as it comes up. But we're going to stick with this name. I think is a little bit more concise. Interesting enough, we actually have a representative from P3 here today, and at least in an unofficial capacity. So our speaker, Mr. Jason Romans, is a new member of P3 Adaptive. So in today's session, the agenda for today, we've got some upcoming events that are in Nashville and around the country. And we've got some details on what's new in Power BI and Excel. And then we've got a great presentation coming up from Jason Robbins on using TMDL, Tabular Markup Definition Language, in Power BI. This is a new way to define your data models. Before, the definition was done in JSON, and JSON will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that when you switch over, I think the JSON definition is gone and is replaced with TMDL, but I'll let him specify the specifics. Anyways, I unfortunately know very little about TMDL, and I thought, who is the one person I want to teach me all about Tyndall? And I thought to myself, Jason Romans, that's who I want teaching me on Tyndall. And so he's going to have a lot of great things to say about TMDL. So I'm really excited for that presentation. And yeah, so let's get into some interesting announcements in the data community. So sticking with the Power BI user group. So we've got a meeting scheduled for April 17th. So this is published on the meetup page right now. You can sign up for this right now. Antoine Christensen, Galena, and Liam Payne, they are co-founders of a consultancy here in Nashville. They will be presenting on data implementation and change management and how those can go wrong. Antoine's literally been doing this for a little while now, and he's really terrific at this, at managing that human side. And then in May, we've got Miranda Grant speaking about a Power BI directory. So when you build something in Power BI, you want people to be able to leverage that and not have to build it over and over again. Problem is, you also can't give everybody access to everything. So a lot of people, they don't know what's out there because they haven't been granted access to it. So the Power BI directory is a solution to that problem. It's a way for people to get a sense of what is already out there so that they can at least have the chance to not reinvent that wheel, hopefully. Then in June, tentatively, details TBD, tentatively June 5th, The joint technical groups in Nashville are going to have another social function. We had one last year in December. It was a lot of fun. Fortunately, I was previously committed, so I wasn't able to make that one, but I'm excited to join this one. If you guys are in the Nashville area, this will be an in-person social joint meetup with some of the other technical groups in town. So we're really looking forward to that one. We're always looking forward to new speakers. So that is our lineup for the first half of the year. We're definitely looking for speakers to fill out the second half all the way from July through the end of the year. So if you have a session you've been dying to speak about, definitely let one of us know. Speak to me, speak to Michael, speak to Sekou. But also, we do have a sessionized page. This QR code will take you to that sessionized page. We're also going to put a link to the sessionized page on our meetup page as well. If you have a topic, particularly if it's something you've spoken about before, is in sessionized, that'll make it super easy to communicate that with us. We definitely encourage you guys to reach out, get in touch, submit your session, and we'd love to have you guys present. Also, I am going to be doing Power BI training. This is all-day training on Saturday, May 10th. The URL and the QR code there will take you to a sign-up page. This is just a sign-up for interest, and I'll have more details on this in the future. So if you sign up here, I'll send you some emails with more details. I did a training about a year ago, and it was the Microsoft Dashboard of the Day training. I had actually taken that training many years before, and there were definitely a lot of similarities. There were things that were still the same, some things new and updated. There were just some things that I felt were opportunities for improvement. And so I've tried to take that feedback and build something a little bit more modern here. One of the things that I'm doing here is I'm also integrating AI into Power BI. And it's not just simply Copilot or how can we use AI to answer questions about a data set. There's certainly some of that, but there's also a lot of how can we use AI to streamline our work, make ourselves more efficient, and accelerate that learning curve. It's I think a more modern approach to learning Power BI. So if you're new to Power BI, if you know somebody who is, definitely send them this way. If you can reach out to me through LinkedIn, email, on the meetup page, and I'd love to get in touch with you. Okay, so Saturday, May 10th is when we're going to have that training. The Nashville Data Nerds, they have brilliant women in data every month. So that's the next meetup. That's going to be on March 25th at 6 p.m. I believe this one is virtual, if I'm not mistaken, but details in the meetup page. They also do a breakfast once a month. That'll be coming up later. The data engineering group has a data orchestration session coming up with Stephen Johnson, who is a data developer advocate at Perfect. That one is going to be on March 26th at 5:30 at Tech Hill Commons. So definitely be sure to check that out. And the Nashville user experience and Nashville product groups are doing a joint spring mixer. So I encourage you guys to check that out. That should be at the New Heights Brewing Company on April 15th. So, I tell you personally, user experience and product is kind of a weak spot for me. So this is something that I really want to try to get better at. So I'm going to make these sorts of user groups and experiences for me a priority in 2025 because it's something that I really want to get a lot better at. Dr. Yorgos Askey is actually speaking with the Data Science Nashville group, and they just had their March meetup on Monday. So he'll be speaking at their April meetup, Data Science and Tech Product Teams. A bit more product and inspiration for you guys there. So that will also be Tech Hill Commons on April 21st. And lastly, there is a Data AI Week. This is a 3-day conference coming up May 14th through the 16th. This is going to be at City Winery in Nashville. So this should be a really interesting talk. There's nothing super heavy here. So if you're not an AI developer, there's still a lot that is here for you. This is really more strategic looking. So you are interested in AI really at any level, hopefully there will be something here for you. I was told that it's $100. So it's a really affordable conference as far as conferences go. So I encourage you to check that out. You can also reach out to Charlie Apigian. I didn't put it here because I don't have them, but Charlie said that he has 50% off codes, and he said he even had a few 100% off codes. So if you bug Charlie, he might be able to give you one of the discounts. There's also a bunch of SQL Saturday sessions coming up. These are a little bit further afield, but hey, maybe you can go down to Jacksonville or South Florida or Baton Rouge and then spend a little time on the beach. Most of these are still open for calls to speakers. Also, FabCon is coming up. There's still time to sign up for this and attend this. It's the week after, March 31st through April 2nd. And there are some pre-cons and post-con days. This is going to be in Vegas. So this is really the big conference all year long. I think they're saving up their announcements for this. I'll speak more about that in a second. And the big, one of the big ones is the FabCon is one of the big ones for Power BI all year. Past Data Community Summit is also a big one for us. So this is going to be in Seattle, November 17th to the 21st. So I submitted some talks to Paz, and so hopefully we'll see if they get selected. But this is always a really terrific conference, one of the big conferences in data all year long. So this is not Power BI specific, it's a bit more sort of data and SQL Server in general, but always a great conference to attend. So I was talking about Fabric Conference and how I think Microsoft is sort of saving up some of their updates for FabCon. That's pretty common for how they do things. When they've got to be a conference coming up, the months leading up to it are a little sparse. The February update was between about 3 and 4 weeks ago. And this is the 20th of March. They haven't released a March update yet. So I think what they're going to do is they'll release it sometime during FabCon. So I think they'll have a ton of stuff then. But right now, the updates for February is a little underwhelming. So they've upgraded Power BI Desktop to a 64-bit version. I think this is a little bit of a nothing burger. You've always had the option to download a 64-bit version. At presumably they just done away with the 32-bit. You can get Copilot in the iPad apps and the in Android in iPad and Android tablets now. Copilot is also adding a bit more detail on how it arrived at a number. So you can see what filter context it is used, making sure that it's interpreted your questions appropriately. So that's nice. They've got support for Azure Maps in Publish to Web. So, nothing super outlandish here. Just some, nice usability improvements here. There's a bunch of small Fabric updates. Again, I think they're saving a lot of stuff here for FabCon. So I'm not going to go into detail on all these things. A lot of these are just sort of small quality of life improvements. I was interested to see that there's now full CI/CD support for T-SQL notebooks, including Git and deployment pipelines. So that's a nice one. If you use T-SQL notebooks, so just handy to have that. They do have demo videos. If you go to their YouTube channel, to get demo videos for several of these items, both on the YouTube channel, their Power BI YouTube channel and the Fabric YouTube channel. They have different videos on each, so check out both of those. In Excel, so they are pushing Copilot in Excel, so you can use Copilot in Excel with Python on Windows, and in both Windows and Mac. You can also use Excel for importing data, so you can bring up an Copilot pane on the side, and you can ask it questions, and it is supposed to query your knowledge graphs. So let's say it should go into the documents that you have access to on OneDrive, on SharePoint, different sources where your data might be stored that you have access to, as opposed to search that knowledge graph to bring information into Excel. I'm not a huge fan of Copilot. There are moments when it amazes me, but there are a lot of moments when it just really disappoints me. So I've not found it to be a really great tool yet. I will point you to Kurt Bueller of SQL BI, who has 5 or 6 videos out now all about Copilot. And he has arrived largely at the same conclusion that I have, which is that it's just not really mature. It's not really there yet. He goes into some explanation as to why and some of the things you can do about it. He does spend some time on column measure descriptions, synonyms, that sort of thing. One nice feature is that you can use Copilot to generate descriptions for measures, and it does a decent job most of the time. But I mean, it's a little underwhelming. So I'm not a huge fan of Copilot right now. We'll see if Microsoft can pull something more meaningful together there. The other problem is it's also a separate $20 per user per month license, so separate from Copilot for Microsoft 365, separate from Copilot for GitHub. So each one of these are different additional licenses you have to pay for. So one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of this, I just don't think it's worth the money, frankly. All right. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Jason Romans, or Jason Romans, who is going to tell us all about Tabular Markup Definition Language and how we can use that to take our Power BI development level.
So this session is enhancing Power BI development. It is fun to stay at the TMDL. I'm not going to do the dance. I want to, but I'm not. Maybe just a little T here. So again, my name's Jason Romans. As mentioned earlier, I recently became a principal consultant at P3 Adaptive. Like Michael talked about, big fan of Rob Colley. That's kind of the genesis of the Nashville Power BI user group. If anything I would point out is check out the podcast that they do called Raw Data by P3 Adaptive. That's something I like to listen to while I'm mowing the yard, driving. It kind of keeps me engaged in thinking about things that I can do in Power BI and Fabric. I do blog at the Dax Shepherd. I do have to work on writing more blog posts. I have a couple that I've thought of recently of things, problems I've encountered. So hopefully I'll get those on the blog soon. I live in Nashville, Tennessee with my wife. I started on the SQL Server DBA side of things. And then I did this crazy thing where I actually started talking to the business and conversing with them and finding out what problems they had. Oh, they're using Power Pivot. So then I started learning the Microsoft BI stack and building out solutions for them. Again, I do the whole stack from integration services all the way to Power BI and now Fabric. I'm also a Simple Talk author. And my favorite data model, I created an analysis services tabular, and you have to name the model. So instead of calling it model or something very related to the business, I named it TARDIS. And it's funny that model was used by the whole company, and you had emails with give me access to TARDIS, tell us about TARDIS. And yes, that data model is bigger on the inside. If you're a Who fan, you'll get it. So I do want to say, obviously, this session is recorded. I also, once this is done, I will put all my slides up on my GitHub, and the demos that I'm using will all be there. If nothing else, if you can get to my blog site, that also has all the links to all the other socials and GitHub. So I do want to stop for a second and say, I wouldn't be here presenting if it weren't for people that took the time to help me with abstracts, with improving my presentations. And I kind of went where, oh, this is about presentations and presenting and writing, but it's also about my career. People have helped me get to where I am now by doing, just helping me with recommendations. I just can't appreciate it enough. I almost get speechless with that. So I just want to say I appreciate everyone that has helped me. So the TMDL journey, we're going to look at what TMDL is. Then we're going to look at the Power BI project version of TMDL. And then we'll look at Power BI and the TMDL view. And then how do external tools play into this? I am a big external tools person. I think they can save you time, but where do they fit into this TMDL journey? And then lastly, we'll conclude. I did realize a little late, like hopefully the bed does not make you fall asleep and that you don't sleep during my presentation. Maybe I should have chose something a little more exciting, people dancing around or something. So what is TMDL? So in the beginning, Michael kind of touched on this. I started on SQL Server Analysis Services Tabular. I did not start when there was multidimensional. So I at least started with DAX and Power Query and that, but you had this one large file that Visual Studio was basically editing. This large, it's called model.bin, and it's one large file. So you're opening up Visual Studio, sometimes it would crash, and at the end of the day, you're just editing this file. Back then, at a certain point, that file was saved in something called TMSL, so the Tabular Model Scripting Language. It's basically JSON. Tabular Editor, which Daniel, who's the creator of Tabular Editor, talks about, it basically was a glorified JSON editor. He created it just to edit that file. So if you wanted, you didn't even have to open up Visual Studio. At a certain point, that was my journey. I stopped opening up Visual Studio for analysis services. I would do all my development in Tabular Editor. So here's the model.bim file in Power BI currently. You can see it's JSON, it's a lot of brackets. It's hard on one screen to even see multiple columns. At most, you can only put a couple up because most of it's going to all those brackets. And if you're trying to write this, yes, I know the code editor will help you, but it's still not easy to deal with. So one of the things is with that one large BIM file, it introduces a lot of issues. First of all, it's hard to comprehend. Like I just showed you, that's not that easy to read. That's not for a human. It also makes it hard to collaborate with others. Back in the day when it was just me developing those models, this was not that big of a deal. But Power BI and Fabric are moving towards implementing version control for everything. I know right now with the PBIX file, it doesn't make as much sense as far as you can't tell what's changed in it. You can't be like, oh, they added a table. But at least if you're backing it up, you're putting in SharePoint, you're putting in Git, you at least can go back to an earlier version. Again, does it even exist if it's not in source control? So what's in a name? TMDL. It stands for Tabular Model Definition Language. So right away, it should kind of tell you we're talking about the model itself, the semantic model. This is not for reports. This is not to define how the reports will be laid out. This is for that model, the thing that we had the model.bim for. So TMDL, as you'll see shortly, it's much more readable. It looks kind of like YAML if you've used that for some of your config files. And what's nice, it's not just the language and how it's structured, but now it also defines the folder structure. So we're getting these separate files for table, perspective, role, culture. That means I can be working on one table file while someone else is working on another table file, or maybe they're working on perspectives. It also has minimal delimiters. We're going to see it's all about that white space. Going back to the Copilot, for this, once you start getting things in text files, then you can use AI like Copilot to say, okay, write me this, give me descriptions. It makes it much easier. Obviously, TMDL is fairly new, so some of the AI is going to have to catch up to actually writing TMDL code. So what it is not, this is not in the JSON format. And yes, I do own this shirt. Going back to the shoulders of giants, this shirt was a shirt that we got for one of the SQL Saturdays for our Power BI study group. And it's just a reminder of how great community is. And it's a reminder that JSON is not the best. So TMDL credit, obviously there's many people that are responsible for it in implementation, but a lot of the credit always goes to Mateus. He's a Microsoft MVP. You may know him from PBI tools. It does show that if you have a passion and you build things and you design things, that it ends up in the product eventually. So this is an example of TMDL. So again, we're not seeing all those brackets. You see that it really is white space that is delineating the code blocks. So it's table date, column date. And it is in a hierarchy. So it's going, I'm going to create a replace, I'm going to do a table date, and then I'm going to start doing these columns in it. And then you have all the properties. So we're going to go through a really quick primer. I'm going to say that I don't think TMDL is something you're going to buy a book on TMDL and read and say, okay, I need to start with variables. I need to start with this. It's not like that. This is not Python. This is not C++. I think what you're going to do is script out existing objects and you're going to modify it. That's how I'm going to use it. So again, we have white space for indenting. We have hierarchies. So again, that table, column, measure, properties. And then one thing you may see from other languages is you'll see this triple slash syntax for descriptions. And this allows different tools to pick up those descriptions and actually fill out things, or it may be a way to document the whole model by having all these triple slashes. Again, I think we're very early on some of the tooling. I think eventually you're going to see more and more things that take advantage. Just like annotations were in the different source files, and a lot of tools used annotations. So, okay, let's start with, where do we start with TMDL? Well, first of all, there's the Power BI project file. So TMDL and Power BI Desktop, these two places, they're related but independent. So you have the Power BI project file. Now you can select just to store it as a project file, which takes it from a PBIX, a single file. Underneath the hood, it's really a zip file that you can rename zip and open up, and you'll see a whole folder. So you can do this instead and actually save it out as that project. But now we're going to get one extra feature where we're going to store the details about the model in the TMDL format. So TMDL view is the second piece. This can be used with those Power BI or PBIX files. So these are independent. You do not have to save it in the project format. You can just use TMDL view. And in fact, I think most people are really going to use TMDL view to begin with. So one thing is, currently, these are preview features. Things like FabCon, this could be announced to be GA, but currently it is in preview. So you do have to enable them. You have two places where you're going to enable them. One is that project file, and then you're going to say, I want to store it in the semantic model using TMDL format. I'll just point out there's an extra checkbox. That's where you store the report metadata in a different format. We won't cover that. And then at the bottom here, there's TMDL view. What's nice about the preview is it does show you links to learn more. So if you're like, okay, I'm going to enable this, but I need to go read up on it, there's the links. I have a whole list of resources at the end, like 3 slides, just full of links, because there is a lot of information out there. So let's start with that first one. We're just talking about TMDL and Power BI Desktop using a project file. I'm going to save it. It's going to be a folder structure, but instead of being JSON, I'm actually going to store it in that TMDL format. Give a little warning that when you have RBI open, that it will warn you that not all those modeling changes are supported. And there is a link for more information. I almost don't even, we don't really talk about some of the limitations because they can change, as we go along. By FabCon, things could change. So I do want to point out, and this goes to version control, that renaming your folder, renaming the Power BI file is not version control. This is not a video game, and this isn't how you save in a video game where you save it right before the boss. You need a better way to do version control. And doing the project file just fits so naturally with Git and Azure DevOps. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have this Contoso 10K file that I've basically modified and saved out a bunch of different ways to generate these demo folders. So it's basically the same data model, maybe report, but it's the way I've saved it out. So this first one I've saved out into that project format. So it's these different folders. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open this whole folder in VS Code. So this is VS Code. I do have an extension and I do list it later. It's a TMDL extension, and then it gives a nice syntax highlighting. But here is my data model. If I stay in this folder for data model, for semantic model, that's everything about my model. But now everything is in TMDL and not in JSON. It's not the model.bin. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and initialize my Git repo. These are all the files I'm going to check in. I'm just going to call it initial project and go ahead and commit it. And I'm going to add all these files to it. I'm not actually publishing it right now to GitHub or Azure DevOps. It's just locally being tracked. So one of the first things I'm going to do, and I know this is very small, is I'm just going to go ahead, and I know this is a definition of a measure. And I know the formatting's good. This was generated by Power BI. So I'm going to go and I'm actually going to copy it over here to this product table. And I'm going to give it a different name. I could delete the other one. I have a lot of options. I'm going to go ahead and give it a different name. And then I'm going to go ahead and check, leave it. So if I go back here, it shows me what's changed. So in my product file, I've added this measure over there. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up the Power BI file that's associated with this. So it gives me an error. There is a problem with that. So this is one of the things about doing it this way, is that if you run into issues, you're going to kind of have to go in and track them down. I'm actually going to get rid of, a second. I'm going to get rid of the formatting for right now. Let's see if that works. I promise you I did this earlier. No problems. So this file's opening up. Again, this is using all that metadata that's stored here. So that did work. So obviously there's something with the formatting, even the lineage tag I kind of worry about because it used the same one. But here I've moved this measure to a different table. So again, you can kind of imagine if you need to do a bunch of changes, if you want to move, I need to move all these. We were using a measure table and I need to move these all over to the sales table. You could do it this way. And then again, it's all in source control. So I can see my changes. I could check this in and I know this is what's been added or deleted.
Aaron was asking, do you recommend making a repository per PBI project or per workspace? How do you go about that?
I think that is going to depend, because if we're talking about just on the computer, just on the desktop, it really is going to depend on your environment. I guess I'm a consultant now because it really does depend. If you already have source control, you already have that, then it would go into that natural fitted things. Like if you had the PBIX checked in, now instead of PBIX, you would have the project file.
Yeah.
I think that's good for now. And if we need, we can talk about it later at the end or even reach out to me. But I think it really depends on your environment. Obviously, having it, you would have your folder structure, but per project is the same as that per PBIX.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
So we kind of saw this earlier, but I wanted to point this out. I purposely did, an issue here so we would see this. but I put a 1 in front of the model type, and this is the error we get when we open up Power BI. Again, we saw it during the demo, but it's just something to keep in mind that if you're making changes in just the code, you may run into this because we're outside Power BI making those changes. So the part that I think a lot of people are going to use, I think this is the thing that's really going to propel Tyndall, is the fact that there's a Tyndall view now in Power BI desktop. So again, this is the second item. It can be used with Power BI or PBIX files, so you don't have to save it in the project. We'll get into this later, but another reason why I think adoption is going to be so high on this, it doesn't require external tools. If you're in a place that's locked down, that won't let you use external tools, that may not even, maybe you can't even run VS Code. This is where you're going to do things. Just like what DAX Query View did for being able to query in Power BI. So it adds, once you enable that option, that preview feature, it adds this Tyndall view button right below the DAX Query View button. I think this is really cool as far as how it will allow you to script out to one of the tabs, or you can copy it to the clipboard. And I do point out that it really doesn't matter if you're on the tables or model selection, it's there either way. The other way is you can just drag it and drop it over. So you could just grab the customer table and pull it over. So once I do that, this is very much like the DAX query view where you have this script 2 down at the bottom, and I can rename that, and then it'll just keep adding scripts. I really, so far, am liking the UI. And then this is just the code itself. And I also like that it has where it shows you the full source code over here. And that way you can kind of tell where you're at, or even how much code there's going to be. You may think you're almost at the end and you're like, oh, I'm just still at the top. I'm barely even looking at this. You can rename those tabs. And again, just like with DAX Query View, those scripts are saved in a folder and saved in the PBIX file. Just like your DAX queries are saved, so are your Tyndall scripts. This is kind of the big thing for a lot of people. We know sometimes there's things that are not in the Power BI desktop UI that are in the engine that you can do with external tools. The biggest one for a while was calculation groups. I could do calculation groups in Tabular Editor, but you couldn't do it in Power BI desktop. This is going to be the same thing with Tyndall View. We're now going to be able to do things that aren't in the UI yet, like perspectives, translations. These are things we'll actually be able to modify and create with Tyndall. So one of the things I owe John Kursky for pointing this out and kind of turning me on to this website. And again, I'll have the resources in the links, or the links in the resources, is there's a site called Fab Snippets. And it's basically various code snippets for Fabric, such as Tyndall, DAX, Python, Power Query, and even AI prompts, learning to write the prompt better to get the result you want. It even has a leaderboard. It's very early. It seems like it's mainly Microsoft people that are on there, but it is very cool. I can see this is where we go to get some of those Tyndall scripts. So this is one by Data Zoe. Who I'm taking it is Zoe Douglas from Microsoft. She has a couple, Rui has a couple, and we'll look at those shortly. So this is actually the one from her to do a DAX date table. So that's the thing. We always tell people, don't use IO date time. Don't use IO date time. And they ask, what do I use? And you're like, SQL Server, use SQL Server. You got one of those, right? Here's another solution. Obviously, Christina Ferris has one in Power Query. Here's one you can do in TMDL. The thing is, this is just text. So we're going to be able to share these scripts. You could have these in SharePoint or Teams. You can even just copy the text and share it with your coworker. I know it scares everyone when I like black out the screen, but I figure that's better than closing PowerPoint. So what we're going to do is this time I wanted to show that it's just regular PBIX file. If that's all you have, you can't save it as the new project format, or the new project format is in preview. So you may not even want to use the new project format. Uh-oh, my report's broken. That's intentional because I'm going to build some stuff that this report is ready to use. So these two work fine. I'm going to go to this TMDL view. I've already enabled it. I actually want to create these two DAX, another calculated columns that allow me to put in a bin or categorize things by unit cost. This right here is not correct code. I just copied over the measures here so they're separate, but there is no create or replace. This is not the full code. One thing to be aware of is to get this product code, like I said, you either script it out to the tab or you drag it over. But remember, this is the code at the time I drug that over, and it's not being refreshed. So this is a way you could save like a certain version, but don't expect this. If I make a bunch of changes in the UI, this isn't being updated. I would have to drag it over to a new script, copy or replace it, however I want to do it. I just want to point that out. So I'm going to go ahead and add that DAX column. I even added a little description up here, and you actually see it in the table later. And then I made a copy of different tables. Now you do have to go ahead and refresh this because I've added new columns. So in that product table, I added these two columns. One is the brand cost bin, and one is to sort it's brand, it's like cereal, the brand bin sort, kind of missing a D there, but that is used to sort. So you can even have your sort columns generated this way. And if I go back to that report now, there it is, and it's sorted correctly. So not only did I add this column that says low cost, medium, and high, it also has this sort correctly. And if you're wondering how I got this report and then broke it, is I basically either deleted it manually after I tested it, or like I said, you can actually have the original product table and just reapply this script, and then those columns are gone again. I do want to show adding a measure. So here's the original sales table. Nothing exciting. And then I do have this measure addition. So I had a measure called large sales slow, which, I'm kind of setting up to fail right there. It uses a pattern that you can read about that really I'm filtering by the whole sales table. I'm not filtering by a column. I'm using the whole expanded sales table to filter. That is going to be slow. The tabular engine wants you to do things by column. So this faster version is actually better. If we look at DAX Studio, you'll see it's faster. The point today is I actually want to create that new measure. So I have this scripted out. I haven't run it yet. If I go to my sales table, it's not listed in the measures, and I'm going to go ahead and apply it. And now it is. So now I can go ahead and use that measure. Again, there are so many options. If I was like, okay, that's a mistake, and I knew I had my copy of my sales table here, I could go ahead and apply it. Again, where I really should be doing that is I should have it in Git and check it in, then make some changes, and that way I can roll back to different versions. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Again, I think that the Tyndall view is where most people are going to use this. This is where it's almost like DAX Query View and DAX Studio. You're going to get more adoption by actually using the Tyndall view and being able to build stuff and add things. And I think the first thing is going to be that date table. So here's the second kind of set of demo files. It's basically very similar to the other one. But this time I'm going to go ahead and open it up in VS Code because I've saved this as a project file. So all those files are there. And sometimes things change. Like if you actually look at the code, things will change just based on maybe the GUID changed, or maybe the way what was set as the default page to open. So you are going to have to, if you're learning Git and kind of how things work in Power BI, just even what the default report or the default for the Tyndall view, which one is active, changes. And that's how it remembers it. So when you open it up, it works. So now I'm going to go ahead and open that report for this. And mainly this one, that opening VS Code is just showing that because I'm using a project file, because I'm using Tyndall, there's a connection from what I do here to what's being done on the back end and me being able to track that. So I have Tyndall view. Sorry, I apologize. I opened the wrong one. That totally explains everything. One second. So now I'm going to go ahead and open that file again. That's the only thing about using 4 different demos is I'm kind of switching between which ones I'm opening. That's more of a me problem. So again, we have some broken visuals here, but this is on purpose. So the problem is I don't have a date table.
That's the difference is that when I have broken visuals, it's because I screwed something up. When you have broken visuals, it's because you did it on purpose.
Yes. So I do not have a date table. So if I go into there, I mean, there's no hidden date table. Obviously, I had one at one point, built the visuals, deleted the date table, deleted the relationship auto deletes. So if I go to Tyndall, again, this one that I copied down, this is not mine. This is from Data Zoe, from Fab Snippets. So if I go ahead and apply this, again, it created a calculated table. And we're not going to go through all this code. We're not here to teach all the format of Tyndall, but you even go towards the bottom, and that's where all your Power Query steps are. So there is a lot to what is in here. And like I said, you're mainly going to script out things and then modify them to begin with. But since this is a calculated table, I need to refresh it. So it's been refreshed. If I look at my visuals, you'd be like, what's wrong with that? Why aren't those changing? And especially if I'm super tired, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Why is it the same number? And it's like, oh, because I forgot the relationship. You have to maintain good relationships. So one way you can do that is you can just script it. Yes, I can drag and drop it, but I can script it. And I will say we're all kind of learning this and what's required. And on this relationship, if you script this out, it's going to have a lineage tag. It's going to have, or no, I'm sorry, this isn't a lineage tag. It is going to have a GUID for this for its name. And that way it's because it doesn't accidentally duplicate one. I found out you can give it a human name or you can leave a GUID in here. Either one work. That's definitely something I'm going to watch in the future and kind of read more about is, I mean, as long as you're giving something unique name, there shouldn't be any problems. But I kind of like that I'm able to rename it, with a readable one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, I have to refresh. Now, if I go up, my report magically works. Again, I think the date table is going to be the big thing. I think with these TMDL scripts, the fact that this is saved in this file, you could have your template or you could have whatever be like, okay, here's a date table you could create. Here's this to create. Or again, you're just going to copy and paste it over here and boom, you got a date table. Now you would have to modify it for your company, for whatever fiscal. And I would encourage you, and I don't even know exactly who's buying fab snippets, but if you create some really interesting stuff, upload it there. Maybe it will end up at the top of the leaderboard. That's one way to contribute back to the community. And I imagine there's going to be other places for that too. So one of the things I mentioned that you could not do before in Power BI desktop was calculation groups. You always had to use Tabular Editor to create those. Make sure I'm in the right place this time. So now what's neat is Kindle View exposes the ability to do more underneath the hood. So if something's a lot announced at FabCon that maybe is just in the engine, but they don't really have the UI yet for it, chances are it's something you'll be able to do with Kindle View. I'm going to go ahead and close this real quick. I want a clean view. I really do like this. I know, again, big with external tools, and we'll talk about this. This is not a replacement for them, but the fact that now you don't even have to have authorization that it's in Power BI, I just think it's going to be used much more. So I'm opening up this again, saved as a project file. I did go ahead and put my scripts in here because I didn't want us to go out, copy them over. So this does not have a calculation group currently. So there's no calculation groups in here. And what's nice is there are different calculation groups. So you could have one for time, you could have one for metrics. Those could all be scripts. And again, it could be maybe that you build this out manually. You built out your calculation group. You got everything exactly the way you want it, or your date table exactly the way you want it. And then you just script it out and you're using that one. So we're not saying you have to use ones for the community. You can build out your own. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. Oh, well, this demo's broke. I couldn't apply changes to the model. And this happened to me. I ran this. There's nothing in here. It's probably something that needs to be submitted to Fab Snippets and like, hey, when I run this, it doesn't work. But I've done a lot with calculation groups. And one of the things I know about calculation groups is in order to use them, you have to turn on a setting to discourage implicit measures. So if you don't know, an implicit measure is where I have a column and I'm just going to drag that column over, and Power BI through magic is going to sum it up or count. It's going to do that. A lot of us do not really believe it's best practice to use implicit measures, that you really should hide these columns. You should build measures on top of it. But calculation groups, because they need measures to work, you have to turn that setting off. You could do it with external tools. You can do it now in the Power BI desktop. If you go to your semantic model, one of the settings is discourage implicit measures. And you would have to change that to yes. So not only are you changing this to yes, but now you no longer will be able to just drag over columns. For some people, it's a big deal. They may have built out a lot using a model of implicit measures. So again, here's something in the GUI. I can just go ahead and select it. But I'm like, this is all about TMDL. I actually want to show that you can do that just through the TMDL code. Obviously, I can set that setting, and then it will actually write the code for me here. Or what I did the first time is I actually came in here and I was like, implicit, discourage. Okay, discourage. Okay, there it is. If I leave it like that's going to set it to true, or I just tried false and it set it back to false. So some of this is going to be with IntelliSense kind of figuring out what the code actually is. So this will set it to true. And I can explicitly say true also, but this is cleaner. So if I run it, it now applies the changes to the model, but I do want to make sure that it really did what it said it did. And it set that to yes. Again, this is going to allow a lot of automating things if you need certain settings enabled, as long as it can be set by TMDL and at either the semantic model or whatever you're doing, that level, then we're going to be able to automate more. So now I can go back and actually create my calculation group. So yes, it worked, but again, like other things that we create, I need to go ahead and make sure it's refreshed. So there's my time intelligence one. So now this one is no longer broken. And I can go in here and try my time intelligence. Like I do want the total so I can, and obviously you can change names. Some people don't call it total, they call it value or initial or whatever you want to call it. And then you can do your month to date or year to date. And remember with calculation groups, like I said, this was just for the time piece to show stuff by month to date, quarter to date. You may have different criteria. You may want to modify these. Maybe you only have 3. And then a lot of people have calculation groups for metrics. So again, that would be easy to create. And I think this will really allow a company to standardize. If you have, okay, this is the date table we use, these are the calculation groups we add to everything. It just is going to make it easier. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the slides to kind of make sure we have enough time, and then we could always come back, or plus that way we leave time for questions. If you haven't been able to tell, this demo presentation was hard because it's that thing of, I want to show that, I want to show that. Oh, there's so much here. And it's one of those things where you just kind of have to limit it and you're going to figure out what kind of drives you into using this. It may be the date table. So again, we talked about external tools. With anything, there's always, oh, this is the death of external tools. You know, DAX Query View, there's no longer, you don't need DAX Studio anymore. And it's like, no, it does more than what this does. Same thing with this. This is not replacing any of these tools. In fact, it may get you to use some of these other tools. For instance, if you haven't been using Visual Studio Code, it's free. This may get you into using Visual Studio Code. I recommend the free TMDL extension. There's Power BI Studio and Visual Studio Code, PBI tools going back to Mateus, and Tabular Editor. This does not replace any of those tools. Tabular Editor does much more than what TMDL View does, and also allows you to connect and do things separate from Power BI Desktop. Tabular Editor for the longest time has allowed you to save your model as a folder. So originally, it would actually, if I change this drop down, it would actually allow you to change it to a JSON format, and it would save the whole model to a folder. And it had different options. And this is what I used for a long time with my model building. Well, now in 2, which is the free version, they have it where you can save it as TMDL. I think version, whatever the newest version of 2 goes back to June. So this is still preview on version 2. And then for Tabular Editor 3, it doesn't even say preview. It's just, it's going to save as TMDL. Again, 3 is the paid version. So their updates are much quicker. But this is showing how external tools are already ahead of the game. We will save in whatever format is decided. And showing Tabular Editor 2, I save it to folder, and here's these TMDL files. So kind of looking around, obviously FabCon, we're going to hear lots of announcements, hopefully a lot about TMDL, but I was trying to figure out where are they going? What's next? And there is a reference at the end. So one thing they want to do is a preview displaying the difference between the current version and the script. Again, kind of almost things we would do in VS Code with Git, and then expanding support for changes that are not currently supported. Like one of my slides shows, this doesn't have support for everything. There is a table that actually shows what's supported, what's not. And then putting TMDL View available on the web, like they did with DAX Query View. And then TMDL View Copilot. And again, I have the reference for kind expansion, and there's probably things on the roadmap itself. I just wanted to kind of put this out to show this is kind of early stages. Again, I will make this slide deck available. There's a lot out there, a lot to read. I'm actually going to stop real quick, and I want to just show this really quick. So this is Fab Snippets. It's very simple website. It's got a feed. It's got a leaderboard. It's got where you can search. You also can pick what type. So I was looking for TMDL only. So again, there's things from Rui in here. John Kursky has a bunch. Nicola, Data Mozart, names some of us would recognize. Zoe Douglas. This is where I came to actually get the examples for the demo. But again, it also has DAX, SQL, Power Query, and then AI prompts. I see this as a very new site based on the comments and like. I think we just have not heard much about it, but I think it's really cool. And I think it's going to be very valuable. So I put the links here. Another thing I didn't know is Zoe Douglas has a blog and talks about the date table and everything. And I'm like, okay, that's one blog I need to start reading whenever there's a new post. Didn't even realize she had a blog. Again, a lot of resources. Another thing you're probably going to read about or want to read about is the lineage tags, because you see it as a GUID and you're like, do I need this? Do I not? For the most part, it's going to be if you have to tie back to the lineage from where that column came from. So that's something, if you're going to change those, you're not just going to script out things, definitely read up on it. And even that could change. I do hope you enjoyed your stay. Sorry there was no cookie or mint on the pillow. I would say the best way to connect with me, contacts, everything is the QR code does go to the blog, and that has all my links on it. There's obviously the email here and the blog URL. Besides the questions at the end, if you go a week and you're like, I just thought of a question, you can always contact me. But I did want to save room in case we do have questions.
This was great. I really loved how you did the error handling. I've spent many an hour trying to decipher a BIM file gone wrong.
I will say the one when you open up the Power BI file, the fact that it tells you line, and even, I mean, in that example, the one that I did on purpose, it actually showed what the problem was, that I put a one in front of it. In fact, I need to submit it, but in the Fab snippets on one of the calculation groups, there's an A after like a parenthesis and it breaks it. And so I need to figure out how you say, hey, can you fix this? Anyone else have questions?
So I have a question. So I noticed the Tyndall extension for Visual Studio Code. So I obviously have Visual Studio Code on my Mac. So does this mean that I can finally, at long last, develop Power BI on my Mac?
Wait a I mean, I guess, well, but then you gotta open it.
You think we'll be able to just push the creator update to change this straight to data model in the service?
I mean, I think there's that. So there's the whole thing, if you're just doing data model changes, that to be able to, sync the repo and pull the model from the repo, there's that avenue. But, and I know it's kind of the whole Power BI on the Mac. I think eventually the solution is going to be the web. I think I'm not an MVP. I don't know, but I assume that is going to be the ultimate solution, is everything in the web. But yes, you could now work on the model this way and make changes and push them that way. It's just if you need to open the reports and if you need to look at things that way. And I just wanted to show out because you brought it up. So I just went to extensions and then Kindle, and then it actually is from Microsoft, the Kindle extension. So I added that, and then it kind of gives me the syntax highlighting and everything else and knows how to treat those files.
Another quick question, Jason. First of all, thanks for doing this. This is great. You were talking about how when you were discouraging implicit measures, you said that you played around with the IntelliSense and took a stab at it and to figure it out. And in terms of figuring out Tyndall that you maybe haven't had a chance to learn yet, have you used an AI tool, ChatGPT or Quad, to say, hey, how would you write this in Tyndall to have this effect? And what has been your experience with that?
I have not done that. I've done the Fab snippets. I've done where I created things through the GUI and then scripted them out.
Yeah.
And that really is going to expose everything that you have done through the GUI. I mean, if you have your complete model and everything, just scripting that out, you're going to see all those settings. I do wonder how early we are, because how much Tyndall files are out there, like to actually train the models. Is there enough Tyndall there? Obviously, Python, people say it's perfect writing Python with Copilot or other AI tools. But Tyndall, I mean, even when you Google Tyndall, you have to add the word Power BI or use Bing search. You have to add the word Power BI to it. Otherwise, it actually stands for something else. So I just don't know if we're at that point. But I think now that we have TMDL, their text files, there's going to be more and more on people's GitHub repos, fab snippets. I think it's just a matter of time. Or if you automate generating those scripts, like you went through and iterated through all the Power BI files and actually generated the TMDL scripts and trained the model that way. But even just finding like, oh, just actually show me all the settings, show me the language for TMDL, that's not even really out there. So even just knowing, okay, this definitely is a model setting. I know it's discouraging implicit measures, so I'm going to go ahead and try typing it. And I will admit, I'm not the AI person yet. So I just barely, I mean, honestly, where I've used it a couple of times is trying to generate the images. And that's where the hotel image came from, but have not really got real deep into it. I will say Copilot, using Copilot now for writing and help.
Great. Well, does anybody else have any other questions for Jason?
And I know people want me to do the TMDL dance and stuff,
Right. Great, Jason.
but that's part of the premium thing. That'll be on my only DAX site where it's premium only. I'll do the TMDL.
I can't wait to see it. Well, Jason, that was a really great presentation. Thank you so much for being here. I learned a ton. I hope everybody else did as well. Just want to give a quick reminder that we have a session on April 17th about data limitations and change management and how sometimes that can go awry. We've got a session in May on a data catalog, so helping your people understand what Power BI content is out there so they can repurpose that rather than rebuilding it. And also the social coming up, the tech group social coming up in June. First two are on Meetup right now. Be on the lookout for details on that social in the near future. Jason, thanks again. That was really terrific. Can't wait to start playing around with TMDL. Thank you guys for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.